This is Joe with LocalBizMKE, and I'm here with Alan Halas of Breaking and Entering Milwaukee, and we're here to talk a little bit about what you got going on, your music blog.
Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, this is great. I just appreciate you reaching out to me. I was looking forward to this for a while now. So tell me a little bit, what is Breaking and Entering?
So Breaking and Entering is a daily music website that we focus on independent music from all over the world. But we predominantly focus on the Milwaukee music scene.
Mm-hmm.
That is the core of what we do. It's probably 90% of our content is just Milwaukee music. All of the new music that's coming out in the city, usually on a daily basis. We have interviews, artist spotlights, all sorts of things like that. A ton of coverage of the local scene is really where we, our core of what we do.
Very nice. How did that get started? How did that idea manifest?
So the story of Breaking and Entering, I'll try to keep it short, is around 2009 I was going into college at Marquette University, and a buddy of mine, Steve Freimark, and I were working on putting together, we were going to do a podcast. And it really was just a running joke. We were going to do a radio show, and then we said, no, let's just do a podcast because we're not going to be good enough for student radio. And so we said, all right, where are we going to do it from? And our friend Katie said, well, we had joked that we were going to do it out of her dorm room. And she said, well, you'll have to call it Breaking and Entering because that's the only way that we would let you in the dorm room to put it together. And so I said, all right, that's what we did. And we never ended up taping it out of her dorm.
Okay.
But we did do a few shows, and then that became a student radio show. And we kept working basically till about 2012-ish. And, Steve had a psychology major, which is super intensive. So I ended up with a lot of the website and everything still there. I was going to sell t-shirts for a little bit, and my way of getting people to come to the t-shirt website was going to be to post a Milwaukee artist every week, and we did a Milwaukee artist of the week for a couple of years. And then eventually this was the blog era of music. That was how you discovered new music. So we ended up, I ended up around 2014 saying, well, let's make a go of it, and I'm just going to post music daily. And now the team kind of expanded from there, and we've done, festivals and shows and, coverage with, the Pabst Theater Group, Summerfest, Lollapalooza, stuff like that, all the way up to that level. So it's just been a gradual build, one thing after another. So
You said the blog era of music and how it's discovered. What was it prior to that?
So the way that you really get music discovered has always kind of evolved, but it's never been one definitive thing, but that's really the majority. Before that, when it was CDs and records, it was literally the way to get your music discovered is if you were the end cap of the aisle at the record store.
Right.
That was it for a long time. The internet came in and changed everything. And then you had to find, music through social media or music through, really, for a while blogs were the big thing that you would check out, for me personally, I followed Fake Shore Drive in Chicago, and I would see all the music coming out of Chicago, and I was like, well, Milwaukee needs to have something like this. And we really, we do that now. Really, even though discovering music has also moved on to whatever's on the front page of Spotify or Apple Music or things like that. But we're in those spaces too. We put out playlists and we put out, content through there as well. But that's kind of been the major way to discover music on a major scale. On a local sense, it's still whatever coverage you can get from local media and press and things like that. That's always kind of been consistent. So nothing really focuses on the music scene more than I think we do.
When you first started, were you kind of reaching out to local artists just to feature them and just to explain what you're doing, or did you kind of get them reaching out to you?
Actually wasn't even reaching out to them. I was scouring, kind of what I do today still, but I was scouring to see what music was coming out, looking online through a lot of social media sites like Bandcamp and SoundCloud and things like that. And I was just posting it, and my way of kind of building the business was I was tagging them when I was posting it on Facebook or Twitter or things like that, or we would just go on a spree of following everybody that we could, and eventually people started to go, okay, well, what's this Breaking and Entering thing that our music is showing up on there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and only one time we posted a leaked album. We posted months before it was supposed to come out, this band called Midwestern Charm. had posted their album on Bandcamp, and I didn't know that it wasn't out yet, so I just put it up on the website, and that was the only time.
So what is Bandcamp? How did it end up on Bandcamp if it was?
So Bandcamp is really where like independent artists can post their music and people can buy it off of there. Same as like SoundCloud is where people just post music and can, you know, hopefully catch the attention of somebody. It's a place for their music to get heard without having to go through, at the time, the hurdles of like trying to get into Spotify, and because you have to upload those things through like a distributor. Okay. So without, you know, having a distribution site, this was just kind of a free place for people to upload their music so that they could get discovered. So, and I was discovering it through that.
Right, yeah, it feels like you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do with it, basically.
Yeah.
So what was the biggest challenge you faced getting started?
I think the biggest challenge of starting any business, and really, I mean, especially in the entertainment space, or in music really, is you have to prove to people that this thing that you're doing is actually like real and it exists and it's, you know, legitimate.
Right.
I think that I still struggle with that in some senses to this day. Like, it's still a challenge.
Sure.
To tell people like, hey, this is, you know, this is my website. This is, because anybody on the internet can post whatever they want.
Right. It's really easy to pretend and just to put on a
and so rather than just being some guy with a website, I really want people to know that there's like a full brand behind it, and then it's, you know, something that I've worked hard at for years. So that I think is the biggest challenge, is making, you know, proving to people that what you're doing is legitimate. But that's with any business when you first start, because, you know, it could be whatever your idea is, especially with like startup culture and things like that. You have to kind of like take it with a grain of salt and be like, is this person crazy, or is this like something that is actually like worth your time and attention? Yeah.
And you had said that you had initially started it to like, as a way to sell T-shirts, but you quickly realized that wasn't necessarily the best way to do it.
Right.
Like, it sounds to me that was just more, you're just more interested in actually just doing the music.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've always had a background in music. I produced hip hop in high school. I actually used to produce music for my cousin, and then went from there on to you know, working with some local rap groups and things like that. So, and then even when we did the radio show, there was Milwaukee music that we were playing all the time. So it just kind of gradually was always in the background, and then finally I was like, let's take this to the forefront.
Yeah, that's awesome. When did you realize you could do this as more than just a hobby and just kind of actually turn it into a business?
It wasn't really until that point of like 2014 when I started posting stuff daily that I was like, okay, well, what kind of business model am I gonna have? How am I gonna like generate revenue? And, you know, even still, that's something that continues to grow, and you know, you figure out where you can make a deal, or where you can make, you know, where you can find sponsors or things like that. That's when I kind of realized, like, when I really put my nose to it and said, all right, let's start working on this daily, I kind of started analyzing, you know, media websites in general. And I have a background in broadcasting and electronic communication, but I had never really thought about, like, well, how do those sites make money? And then started to analyze from there, and Google is your friend, and, you know, learn from there.
Just really working at it. Just actually put it into like habit, and not just working at it as a
just
job.
More critically consuming the websites and stuff like that I was going to. So
absolutely. So what do you think, like, what big breaks have you caught along the way to kind of, you know, you kind of always have to catch something to really gain some traction. What do you think your big break was? I
think the first thing that we did that I really was like, okay, this might be, you know, something very viable, was Sarah Peranto at Summerfest at the time, gave us a media pass for Summerfest. And, you know, growing up in Milwaukee, that is like the biggest music event for us. Is you know, and it is, you know, growing up, we go to it year after year. But then to be like, oh, they have like, they're going to give me a credential and they're going to let me go in for free and I just have to write about it. That's when I kind of was like, well, okay, now the door's open. Like, we can work with them. And then she actually moved over to the Pabst Theater Group and still works there. And so we have a great working relationship with them now. But then building off the festival thing was kind of like, well, Summerfest was cool. Let's try, you know, Lollapalooza in Chicago, or let's try Riot Fest. Or we did Soundset in Minneapolis last year. So, like, gradually, one after another, these things, and that, again, goes back to proving that your business is legitimate.
Yeah.
when we started getting
concept.
when we started getting access to these festivals and things like that, that's kind of when I was really like, hey, this could be something.
Yeah, for sure. I guess one thing I wanted to ask you that, like for, Summerfest itself, and this is kind of just a side tangent, but Summerfest, they say the world's largest music festival and everything, and it's a huge deal around here. Is it as big of a deal for the national artist to get Summerfest and to play Summerfest as it seems?
Surprisingly, yes and no. So when you tell people that you're from Milwaukee, if they're somebody that's well traveled in the music industry, they right away they think of Summerfest,
Sure.
which is good. I would say major headlining acts right now might not know it because there are so many festivals.
Right.
They might not know that stands out from a Lollapalooza or a Bonnaroo or even like the smaller festivals. I mean, every weekend in summer now there's basically a big music Summerfest like festival somewhere in the country.
Yeah.
So it's harder for them to distinguish that now, but the people that are veterans in the music industry, because Summerfest has been around for 50 plus years, they kind of know
Sure.
what Summerfest is all about.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. It's a big deal, but it's not maybe not the biggest deal necessarily.
Right, not on a
if you're
national
from,
scale, yeah.
If you're a major band in, say, even like California or even outside of the U.S.
Right.
All right.
And that's at no discredit to the people that work on it. I mean,
of course.
I still know that's
Yeah.
a massive endeavor to take on 11
absolutely.
days
Yeah,
of
I
music.
didn't mean to imply that. It
Oh,
wasn't.
yeah.
It was kind of curious, just from like a outsider's point of view, because
Yeah.
I'm not exactly, music hasn't really been in my background, and it's
Right.
been just, it's something I kind of follow. I like the finished product of it, but not necessarily taking the time to appreciate the backstory of it. Which I guess brings me to my next question: is like, how do you go about connecting with people that aren't necessarily music people? Like, I think I would describe you as a music person. I'm pretty sure you would say the same. As like,
Yeah,
you've
definitely.
you've been involved in all aspects of it. You have an appreciation of the creation, the promotion, the finished product, as opposed to someone like me who just listen to music. I enjoy it. If it's a good song, it's not, it's whatever. It's not that big. So how do you bridge that gap in trying to reach the non-music people?
So that's where kind of having this like weird kind of double life that I have comes in play. I have a marketing background as well that I just picked up through internships in college, and then working for Pure Max Bank and things like that. So I kind of have this weird I get the corporate culture, but then I also get the entertainment culture.
Sure.
And so I can sort of speak both languages. So I think that that's something that really helps me connect with somebody that doesn't really get other than apart from just face value of listening to music. I think that's what helps me kind of develop the business sense too. Is I, especially having a marketing background, to be like, this is why you want to be working with Breaking and Entering, or this is where it's going to benefit both of us.
What sets you apart.
Yeah. So I think that is something that is pretty crucial to developing a business, is being able to speak in both terms of the corporate world, the marketing world, and the entertainment world, which at times can be vastly different from the business sense of it.
And I think that's absolutely true, and I think that's also true from a marketing standpoint, as opposed to just non-marketing people. Like, there's almost a language barrier in how you think of that too.
Oh, totally.
Which is also interesting to try to bridge that gap and to try to understand it, because when you talk to somebody and they're just like, and they seem to just hate all marketing or all ads in general, and they're just like, what is it? I don't get it. But then you look at it and you're like, well, I feel like it's done correctly, and that's that moves product, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do.
And I see that a lot on the other side with artists, where they just there are people that just want to put the music out. That's really what they want to do. They love doing it, and they just want to, at their core, make music.
Yeah.
And hopefully receive some kind of incentive for that.
Right.
And so when I talk to a lot of them, I analyze what they're doing as far as creating music and putting out albums, and I think I have the marketing aspect kicks in, where I say, well, okay, now what about possibly putting out the video beforehand, or putting out whatever beforehand. So in terms of that, that's something that doesn't even fall on their radar. They just think, hey, let's put the album out, and then maybe we'll put out a video for the sake of making a video later. or something like that. Whereas I'm kind of like, hey, if you have content, you could really, really build this into something and create a story out of it.
Does it not fall on the radar because it's just something they don't think about, or do you find that there's people that are actually like actively against it and just like, no, I don't want to do it, go about that way, that's cheesy, or that's
I think
whatever?
they don't get the why aspect of it. They don't get the purpose behind it. You know, I've seen local artists do great rollouts for albums, and I've seen local artists that just throw it out there and see what happens, and hopefully somebody hears it. So there's definitely both aspects, and they're both, you know, on a huge, huge difference.
Yeah.
But I've seen both sides of it, and you know, I can appreciate when somebody puts out an album the right way in my head.
Yeah, and it's certainly, I think it's a lot of, at least from my standpoint and what I would look at it as, they might not understand the why, they also just might not understand the how, and you know,
Yeah.
that's a lot of it. I mean, they make music, that's what they do well.
Right.
And a lot of times that takes a very particular type of person, you know, a particular way of thinking, just to be creative in that way.
Yeah.
And so to be the analytical mindset and kind of switch hats, it
Yeah.
can be difficult for sure.
Oh, definitely.
For anybody, and I think it is a good, you know, it's good that there is someone there to bridge the gap and help with that.
Yeah.
Do you actually work with a lot of artists in that regard of like helping them promote their stuff and actually like, or is it just
not
kind of,
as much? I will say that I've had a couple stints where I've tried to manage artists, and there's actually artists that really want me to manage them.
Sure.
And I kind of shy away from it now, because I think that that's something that if you're going to be a manager, it's going to devote 100% of your time working. As where I have my own thing, and I'm like, I really, well, I could,
you don't want to stretch yourself too thin.
Yeah, so where I really do get to have those conversations, though, it's just kind of, you know, in passing, you know, whether I'm at shows or somebody's telling me about what they have coming out or something like that. Occasionally I take a meeting or two and people ask about, you know, how do I get out to the right thing, or I do, you know, I've done like, spoken at seminars, or not seminars, but like workshops and things like that, where I've just kind of, you know, from my aspect been like, this is what works and this is what doesn't work and this is why it works.
This is my 2 cents.
Yeah,
Here you go.
and try to connect those people to say like, okay, here's a logical flow of doing it.
Yeah, just to give yourself more legitimacy too in the business.
Yeah, and I really love actually talking to like artist managers and things like that. I'm friends with Ishel from Ashara Artist Management and Jeremy from High Tribe and people like that locally they manage artists. That's the core of what they do, but they're people that get the why and the how of putting out a record.
Sure.
So
right.
it's great to have those conversations with those people. I really enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
Just because we get it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's no translating. We get it.
Yeah,
So.
it is nice when you speak in the same language as someone, basically.
Yeah.
So, what has been easier than you thought in the whole process?
That is a tough one. I don't think anything necessarily comes super easy. Once the momentum started picking up with Breaking and Entering, like being able to create content and post and things like that, I have it down to a science now, where, you know, a lot of the stuff that I work on is getting worked on in the morning and then scheduled to come out during the day. It's evolved greatly from 1 post a week to like it became a post a day to 3 to 4. So now we aim for like 4 to 5 posts a day and a social story on Snapchat and Instagram and content for Instagram separate.
That's a lot of work.
And then everything gets tweeted out and put on Facebook as well.
Sure.
So like that has come easier once I've learned to really like manage my time. That has been probably something that I would say has come easier than, but I mean that still took years and years of learning to say, okay, you know, how can I create content a little bit quicker, or what can I repurpose to, you know, create more content.
What is your primary source of content, or what is the type of content that you produce the most?
I would say, well, everything is pretty consistent now, where everything that we post on the website for that day is getting onto our Facebook page. Everything from breakingandentering.net is getting tweeted out at the same time. And then Instagram and Snapchat are a daily story that is really just kind of pins back to like, here's what's on the website today. So.
But like, what are the type of posts? Are you posting artists?
Those are mostly write-ups on new music that's coming out.
Okay.
So whether it's somebody's new video that came out, or somebody's album dropped, or something like that, or just honestly somebody puts out a single, that's probably the most content that we have, is just new music, because people want that exposure for it.
Sure.
And that's,
are artists reaching out to you and
yes.
With their
now it's kind of changed that it's not so much me seeking out people as it's more of I get a lot of emails and DMs, and I much prefer emails.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Keep track of it all, and just to.
Well, my main thing is for my personal DMs. I'm I also have my friends are in my Facebook messages.
Yeah.
At the same time,
Right.
artists are. So I try to tell them it's gonna get lost in the shuffle if you just DM me. Just send me an email. We have a submission email, or there's even a contact form on the website. Things like that. Send it in the formal way, and then I will be able to take it and run with it if I get a chance to listen to it.
Yeah, that's definitely, it's one of the things I learned very early on when I was kind of trying to do my own thing for a little bit, was man, you really got to have those systems down, and you can't just have things scattered everywhere, because you're just wait, was I supposed to get back to this person? Oh, this person,
right.
What do they want? Who is this? And then it's just, it gets lost real quick, and that's that's certainly something you don't necessarily think about until you how hard is it to check a few different things?
Right.
It gets very hard very quickly.
And I think from the artist standpoint, they're oh, this is I'm personally connecting to this person, but you're you are, and so is 200 other people. So it's trying to keep sense of where it all is coming from.
For sure. So what is the music scene like in Milwaukee, and how does it compare to other cities, some of the bigger cities, or even some comparable size cities, or what is it like?
So I generally think of this from my historical perspective of it, being in the music scene now for what's gonna sound crazy, but over a decade really, since producing music and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It has grown so immensely in the last 10 to 15 years from where it was. For a long time in Milwaukee, cover bands ran everything, and
the Toys,
and
that was
the
it.
Toys, the Boogeymen. I don't know. You could probably look up a billion of them.
Yeah.
So original music, it was happening here. People were making it. It just wasn't getting the exposure that it was now. And I think one of the biggest proponents is, WMSE has always been there and done a great job. But I think the real catalyst was when Radio Milwaukee formed and switched their format from jazz to, their blend of music now, and they put an emphasis on local music as well. That was a major platform to transform, to make it seem more accessible, that kids can make music now and get it on the radio, and that was a hurdle that years ago just took leaps and bounds to happen. I see a lot more music that's just on all genres being played out live more. There's places like Cactus Club and Company Brewing and Linneman's and numerous places that are their focus is Milwaukee music and its original music, and giving those places a chance to shine. Mm-hmm. So I've seen it grow from just people that are in their little clique, and their little clique over here in River West, and their little bit in Bayview, to everybody kind of is able to kind of mesh and network now and realize what people are capable of doing, and get to see everybody's skills on display.
Nice. Do you think that's you think that growth is similar to? Do you think it's on a nationwide scale? It's similar to that, or do you think it's?
I think the talent level is definitely there now.
Yeah.
That was definitely not always the case. Whereas there was a while there where it seemed like there was maybe 3 or 4 acts that could get signed nationally. Now I could think of 20 that are Milwaukee acts that have the potential to create something that could be marketable nationwide.
Nice.
And that's a rough estimate of 20. I'm sure there's numerous other ones. If I got on a roll and started thinking about it, that would be actually they could make a run.
Nice.
So, yeah.
You said that it's across all genres of music. You think it's growing, but is there a genre of music that you think specifically, when you think Milwaukee music, what would you think as far as genres?
For me, I would say that hip hop is the most created music here. Okay. I would say that's maybe not 90%, but the majority of music being made here is hip hop. because again, technology has made things so accessible that
Sure.
you can record off a laptop, you can make beats off of a laptop. You know, it sounds much better in a full studio when you do things the right way. But I think just the amount of, and the popularity of hip hop in general, I mean, the amount of output in that genre is probably far greater than anything you're getting from like a rock perspective. And there's a lot of great rock bands making great albums, but I think if we're talking purely quantity, I think hip hop is the most made music here for sure.
All right, good to know. Good to know. So what? Who are you listening to at the moment? What's your?
Ooh, I listen to. Well, I do listen to everything, and that's not a cop out. That's really honestly the truth. I could be in the mix from like a hip hop track to a rock album within the course of the same day. I actually just saw a band called Flat Teeth last night that I really like. They were probably one of my favorite shows that I've seen in the last year or so here locally. From a hip hop perspective, I'm always listening to what Twan Mack is putting out. He's a rapper that has gone back a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Has a rich history of his own in Milwaukee music and runs a brand called Nostalgic Visuals as well.
Okay.
And so he runs a company as well too. So there's relatable stuff from that. I mean, there's everything from like Raina is putting out great music. Abby Jean she's putting out a record. Gold just put out a record. There's so much great stuff that it changes daily what I'm listening to for sure.
Nice. What's your primary way of consuming music? Are you listening to iTunes? Are you just live music? Is it just
this would suggest a lot of vinyl.
This would, yes.
Not a lot of local music coming out on vinyl. No, okay. I am the best investment I've ever made is Spotify Premium.
Okay.
Honestly, and it's a lot of that and like the free sites like Bandcamp is still around, SoundCloud is still around. I think that the majority of my music comes probably through Spotify now. It's probably the only streaming service I actually use every day.
Okay.
So.
Nice. So you got a pretty big show coming up, or talk about that a little bit?
Oh yes. The Big Beat MKE Beat Battle is in the works. It's our third year doing that. Part of what we do, as in addition to just being a website, is we run events too. Our flagship event is the Big Beat MKE Beat Battle. Which the way I like to describe it is think of the movie 8 Mile but with beats. Instead of people rapping at each other, they're just making beats and they get 3 rounds. It's a series of 8 live events that we do at the Jackalope Lounge, which is adjacent to the Wicked Hop in the 3rd Ward. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be, this year it'll be April 30th through June 18th. And it's tournament style, so we have judges, and this year fans will be able to text in as well to vote to see who moves on to the next round. They can submit music beforehand at breakingandentering.net/BigBeatMKE to cut it down to 16. We usually have a group of like local radio personalities and artists themselves and prominent names in Milwaukee music to cut that down to the final 16. But it's a major event for us. We love doing it. It's 2 beat battles a night, and then there's 2 performances from 2 Milwaukee hip hop acts. Okay. And there's a DJ, and obviously we're at a bar, so there's drink specials and all sorts of great things like that as well. Very nice. It's just a fun time, and we get to do it 8 weeks in a row, and we love doing it.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Should be looking forward to it. That's about all the questions I have. So what's the best way to reach you, to get in touch, to reach out?
Well, you can always see what we're doing at breakingandentering.net. Usually Monday through Friday there's content up there. You can connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. We're on TikTok now. We have Spotify playlists. We are all over the internet, but breakingandentering.net is the hub that you can find all of that from.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Of course.
Learned a lot. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you.
Right,
thank you for having me.
All right.